Tonight's big stories. The Treasury Department estimates that the government is spending more on pensions for retired police and military personnel than for the salaries and training of its active force. With that, economic managers continue to call for reform in the pension system. But the Defense Department warns of mass retirements ahead of the reform's implementation. Is there a win-win solution to this?
Grab Philippines is facing another round of fines from the Philippine Competition Commission. According to PCC, Grab is falling behind with its mandated refund to customers. We'll get Grab Philippines' response later in the broadcast.
And the redemption arc is complete. Gilas Pilipinas exacts revenge on Cambodia, 80-69, to reclaim the men's basketball gold medal in the 32nd Southeast Asian Games. More of that later in the show.
Welcome to the big story. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Chicky Verhel.
And I'm Sean Yao.
Well, girls, yesterday we were talking about this. We were worried about the morale of our soldiers and our policemen when it comes to reforming the pension system.
Yes, on the other hand, we're also worried about the government going into fiscal collapse because of the lack of reforms to this system.
And because of that, the Defense Department is actually warning of mass retirements in the military if government approves reforms to the pension system for uniformed personnel.
But Gretchen and Sean, the Treasury Department maintains the current pension system is simply unsustainable given that MUPs make no contributions to the fund.
The Treasury estimates that the annual budget for MUP pensions is much larger than the yearly allocations for salaries of personnel on active duty. Arian Kalumbiran with the big story.
The government is spending more on pensions of its retired military and other uniformed personnel than on maintaining its active force. This was revealed by the government's treasurer to the Senate at a hearing on Monday. A 2019 study conducted by the GSIS shows that if this pension system continues, unfunded liabilities or the funding needed for MUP pensions will reach 9.6 trillion pesos. That represents some 53.4% of the country's gross domestic product in 2020. The Treasury says this is alarming as the government is spending more for the retirement fund of MUPs than for salaries of active personnel.
Mas naalarma po kami na yung pong pension mas malaki pa po sa ginagastos natin para sa MOE ng capital outlay. Otherwise, mas lalaki po yung inuutang natin to be able to finance. Dahil nga po, again, we go back to the issue na wala pong kontribusyon, wala pong pondong nakalaan dyan.
National Treasurer Salia De Leon notes that the current pension system for MUPs is fiscally unsustainable as personnel do not contribute to the pension fund. Their retirement benefit is taken out of the national budget.
Variables, which have been going on for years, make the whole pension system highly susceptible to shocks. The current design features pose serious threat to sustainability of the system, placing future generations of MUP and their families at risk.
With that, economic managers are now calling for reforms in the retirement benefit, starting with mandatory contributions that will be taken from the personal's base pay. However, the Defense Department warns that reforms to the pension system could lead to mass retirements. Defense Officer in Charge Carlito Galvez says around 70 to 80% of military personnel are now looking at availing themselves of optional retirement ahead of the implementation of reforms to lock in their benefits.
At present, mere discussions of proposals relating to retirement benefits has already affected the morale and caused uneasiness, not only from within the active ranks of the armed forces, but even from our veterans and retirees.
Meanwhile, the PNP says that of the 18,000 personnel that retired in 2022, 12,000 have availed of optional retirement as they want to obtain retirement benefits under the current system. With this, Senator Bato de la Rosa, who was former chief of the PNP, proposed that pension reforms should only apply on new entrants and not on current retirees and those still on active duty. Arian Kalumbiran, We Are One News.
And to give us his 2 cents on the proposed reforms for the MUP retirement system, we have with us on the show global investment banker Steven Kunyeng. Welcome to the big story, Stevie. So I think the name is a dead giveaway. We're calling it a pension system, not a pension fund, because it lacks contributions. Stevie, what do you think is wrong with this fund and what reforms actually have to be made?
Okay, let me bring up 5 points because we need to look at the look at this in holistically. First, this is a legitimate funding issue. I'm not arguing with what the economic managers are saying. However, we also have a legal and moral undertaking when you enter into a contract, right? Supposing you sign a 5-year contract to be employed with somebody, and after year 1, he says, by the way, I'll change what we signed and agreed to. That's kind of not fair. So if people entered the military or police with certain expectations on salary, on pension, that is like a contract, okay? And so whether it's legally binding, at the very least, it's morally binding because you made those representations. You should respect that. Third is what has been done in similar situations. In the late 1970s and early 80s, they deregulated transportation in the US, trucking, airlines, everything. So what happened was the old system where you had set rates, no discounting, fell apart, and you had initially People's Express and other carriers. So the whole system changed, flexible pricing and all that. So what did they tell the pilots and the cabin crews in the US? The old rules are no longer sustainable. We cannot continue with the old salaries, the old pensions. How did they reform it? They basically said, everybody who's employed today, we will respect. Everybody going forward will now be under a new type of contract and a new type of pension. So you did not break your word to the existing people, and you basically said to the new people, the rules are clear for you. It's unfortunate you will not make the same amount of money and security, but the industry has changed. That's how you do it. You do not break your word to the existing, but you make it clear what the new rules are for the newer employees. Now, what happens if you do it that way? You will not have the mass resignations because then somebody will say, even if I have 10 or 20 years to go, my existing pension plan stays with me. Now, to somebody who's new, you say, you come in, these are the new rules. So that's what I would say is the third point. The fourth point is there should be some respect for the nature of the service. In other countries, military people, especially those frontliners and on active duty, do get special benefits, special pension, special health care. Because unlike other people, they are putting their lives on the line every day. I don't see that discussion. Now, people are saying it includes support staff, it includes this, it includes that. Those are all legitimate. We can start delineating. But yes, there should be some recognition for the special risk and the special duties military and police people do to basically secure our safety and the country's security. Lastly, I'm a little worried that yet again, we are discussing the symptoms rather than the cause. Why are we in this situation to begin with? There used to be a different retirement system, the RSBS. It was mismanaged. There were negative returns. The fund was bankrupt. So we came up with this new thing because we felt we couldn't tell soldiers and police, by the way, at the end of the day, your pension is nothing, which you were counting on. So they came up with this. Nobody forced anybody to do this. Now that we have it, let us last keep our word. If we're going to reform it, are we just going to have a new version of the old fund? Which means, will there be safeguards on how it will be run? Will there be clear delineations and guidelines on where it can invest? Is there going to be a target return on investments? Most global pension funds seek a 6 to 8% return and are very prudent in how to do it because they know actuarially that is what they need to hit to give a positive return to the fund and not run into deficits. So are we also looking at the cause and keeping it and addressing that rather than the symptom, which is we can't sustain the pension, we can't give the returns? And then the last thing I'd like to mention is Previously people have said, oh, look at these military people, they get on average 40,000 a month versus GSIS people who get 12,000 and SSS people who get 4,000 on average. Again, rather than be negative and say they make 40,000, I would say, why are the others only making 4,000 and 12,000?
Sir, you've definitely made a lot of suggestions, good suggestions to make this more sustainable. But we're looking also at the short term. I think if we don't implement the reforms right away, it will cost about 848 billion annually for the next 20 years. So what would you propose, I guess, to alleviate the situation in the short term right now?
Okay, again, as I said, first you phase in immediately for new recruits. But I think you owe it to the old recruits to respect what you promised them and what was part of the deal. Now, if you wish to lessen the burden a little bit, what do global firms do when they do retrenchment? There's the mandatory retrenchment, but usually before that, you have a voluntary retrenchment where you say, if you retire now, we can give you some kind of special retrenchment where we will tell everybody, do you really want to be in the military and work for 10 more years, 20 more years, whatever you have, we'll pay you the pension you promised. You want to do early retirement, maybe we'll give you some discount on that, but at least a lump sum already. So I'm not saying sometimes, there are no easy answers. But the government voluntarily passed this law, passed this pension, and why pick on the people who are only doing their job and frankly, under an agreement which was set at the time they joined? There are other ways to fix the gap in the meantime. Basically, sometimes the problem is we obsess with short-term solutions and exacerbate the long-term problem. The long-term solution is fix the pension reform, have it two-tiered to respect the existing system for the actual people covered and change it for new recruits going forward. Was it painful? Did the airlines have to take a one-time hit for changing the system and the pension, etc.? Yes, they did, but they're all still around. So, I agree the finance issue is very, very serious, has to be addressed, and it's a big amount. But why do it on the back of people who did nothing wrong? And this is what you promised them. Now, change the promise for the people who are coming in now. That's fair.
All right.
Maybe that's the compromise, to have a two-tier system. And I said, that has been done in many industries and in many countries globally.
Right, Stevie, that's exactly
also exactly what Senator Bato de la Rosa has suggested. So maybe he is actually looking up the right alley for a solution to this. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have to leave it there for now. Global investment banker Stephen Kunying. Thank you.
Mahirap nga naman, na galawin yung sweldo mo,
Diba? Tsaka parang yun nga, biglang babaguhin,
Good points right there. But ito naman, tubong lugaw pero kulang sa responsibilidad. This is how the Energy Department and some congressmen described the franchise of the National Grid Corporation of the Philippines during the hearing of the House Committee on Energy earlier today. Amidst the scrutiny of the country's electricity problems, loopholes in the operations and mandate of NGCP have surfaced. During the hearing, it was revealed that the only payment that the NGCP makes to government is its franchise tax, which amounts to 3% of all its gross receipts from its operations. The DOE has since called on Congress to review the NGCP franchise to operate and manage the country's power transmission lines. Aside from this, the ownership of the NGCP was also put into question. It was noted during the hearing that the company is 40% owned by the State Grid Corporation of China. This earned the ire of several congressmen. Let's hear what they had to say.
Kailangan na ayusin yung franchise. It's the only franchise with 3% in lieu of all taxes. Walang local tax, walang national tax. We should be tighter on that and give them more obligation and give more role to the government as to the powers of government to mandate or to control NGCP.
Kahit anong gawin natin sa generation at saka sa distribution, pag yung grid is not under our control na we could not implement immediately mga corrections, ay wala.
Now, Congress and the Energy Department found out some more things about the NGCP. Let's bring in Brian Basa to tell us what. Hi, Brian.
Sean, amid the questioning of the franchise and earnings of the National Grid Corporation, the company's shortcomings in the past power outages caused by transmission line failures have been brought to light. It was highlighted that NGCP has 3 delayed transmission line projects. There's the Hermosa San Jose Transmission Backbone Project and then 2 interconnection projects, Mindanao Cebu and Negros Panay. Energy officials previously explained that the red alert in Luzon last week could have been avoided if only the transmission line projects had been completed. Now they're expected to be up and running in August this year. Sean.
Thanks for that, Brian Basa. Now, still on power and our power woes, no? I think today, President Marcos actually agreed to extend the contract of Malampaya gas field by another 15 years, right? So, sabi kasi nila mauubos na raw by 2024. Pero ngayon na-extend by 2027. But just to clarify, no, hindi siya actually nauubos. Humihina yung pressure from underground or from under the sea. And yun yung tinatawag nating nauubos siya kasi mas mahirap na siyang hatakin.
But they're looking to dig more wells this time.
Exactly.
Look for other sources.
Right. Interesting kasi dati si Associate Justice or Supreme Court Associate Justice Antonio Carpio, sabi niya dati, you should look for additional, well, not additional, pero parang pampalit.
Alternative source.
Yeah. To Malampaya, which is the Recto Bank daw. More than twice
service
yung
contract,
reserves.
72 yan. Tapos service contract, 38.
Pero sinasabi nila, dapat ngayon pa lang, we should act on it and not wait for it to expire because that will happen next year.
It's already too late, I think, kasi next year na nga dapat.
This was actually 2 years ago. Sabi niya, in 2 or 3 years, which is now, 2023, 2 to 4 years from now, you'll have 12 to 14 hours of rotational brownouts.
Nangyayari na ngayon. All right.
What other things should we expect from this extended Malampaya deal? We have Camille Samonte to tell us. Camille, go ahead, please.
Chiki, the contract calls for drilling activities specifically for 2 deep water wells. The first phase of the project is expected to start next year until 2029. There's also exploratory drills that will take place away from the Malampaya production area. The DOE says the exploration, extraction, and other activities will require around $600 billion. That's why they really need the help of the private sector on this. But the DOE is also expecting to earn from this extended contract from Malampaya. Just for reference, the government was able to earn some 374 billion pesos from the Malampaya gas project since it started in the 90s. Chiki?
Thank you, Camille. Again, that was Camille Samonte of News 5.
Up next, the Senate cites in contempt a police officer who refused to name his informant on the controversial 6.7 billion peso drug bust from last year. More on that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. You're also watching the big story here on One News. Do you guys remember the biggest drug haul of last year?
6.7 billion.
Yeah,
Hindi natin makalimutan yan. Well, earlier today, an enraged Senator Bato de la Rosa threatened to throw a microphone at a police officer who refused to name his informant. But before that, let's give you guys a rundown of what transpired that led to the hearing. On October 8, 2022, the PNP seized a total of 990 kilograms of shabu, almost a ton, during an anti-illegal drug operation in Barangay 252 in Tondo, Maynila. Aside from the illegal drugs, the operation also yielded items allegedly belonging to police officers, including IDs and incriminating documents. On October 9, 2022, then PNP Chief General Rodolfo Azurin publicly announced the 6.7 billion peso shabu haul and the arrest of Master Sergeant Rodolfo Mayo. Come January, Interior Secretary Benhur Abalos asked full police colonels and generals to file their courtesy resignations. In April, Abalos later on announced that there was a massive attempt to cover up the arrest of Mayo. That same month, Brigadier General Narciso Domingo, chief of the PNP Drug Enforcement Group, was sacked from his position and transferred to the office of the PNP chief. He led the anti-drug unit when Mayo was arrested during the anti-drug operation. Fast forward to the Senate hearing. Senator De La Rosa pressed Police Captain Jonathan Sosonko, head of Philippine National Police's Drug Enforcement Group, Special Operations Unit 4A, arresting team to name their informant in the drug sting. Sosonko, however, claimed not knowing the informant. De La Rosa, though, was not convinced.
Paano mo ma-handle kung hindi mo nakita? Ano po kasi sir saan ako? Tawag-tawag lang yung talaga yung information na sir Tawag-tawag? Yes, Your Honor. So sino yung tumatawag sa'yo? Sir? Sino tumatawag sa'yo? Yung informant nga po ng IFL. Sino nga informant na yun? Hindi po, Bakulukuhin ha? Papatuhin kita nitong microphone na ito ha? Wala naman po talaga akong maibigay sir dahil hindi ko naman po talaga kilala ang informant. Ikaw nagsinungaling susungko? No, Your Honor. Ha? No, Your Honor. Akin na yung number ng informant mo.
Well, it's not just that transpired earlier. We also heard reports that a police officer was detained in the upper chamber after the hearing. And let's confirm that with our Senate reporter, Mayan Los Baños. Mayan, totoo ba yun?
Yes, Gretchen, that's right. The Senate held Police Captain Jonathan Sosonko in contempt and sent him to a detention facility also inside the premises of the Senate after they noted discrepancies in his testimony. The senators also attempted to squeeze information from Police Master Sergeant Rodolfo Mayo, but they were unsuccessful. Mayo explained that he was being cautious because he's already facing charges lodged against him in the court. However, the senators insisted that despite Mayo's refusal to speak, they were convinced that he had accomplices. Gretchen?
Thank you for that confirmation. Definitely a heated exchange in the Senate today. Our Senate reporter, Man Los Baños.
In other news, Grab Philippines is facing another round of fines over its supposed failure to initiate refunds. The Philippine Competition Commission imposed a 9 million peso fine versus Grab for failing to reimburse a total of 25 million pesos to its customers. The PCC is also sanctioning the ride-hailing company for submitting incorrect and misleading compliance reports on the refund order. For its part, Grab says it was surprised by the Commission's decision to impose fines, saying they're 100% committed to fulfill the refunds.
Let's unroll this issue some more with Grab Director for Public Affairs, Sherry Lise Bonifacio. Sherry, can you give us the real update on the funds? We understand you have been trying to return it, and we have read your statement. But can you just tell us really quickly, magkano na po ang naibalik at magkano ang hindi nyo maibalik?
Okay. Hi. Let me begin by saying we are very happy with the resolution of this issue. So this actually is stemming from the 2018 Grab-Uber merger, and this reimbursement issue was ordered in 2019. So it has been pending since then. So we really welcome that we are now able to conclude the matter. So we have never evaded or, refused to pay the 25 million. Currently, we have already reimbursed about 73% of the amount, so about 18 plus million. So the struggle or the challenge has been how to reimburse the 6.9 million to passengers who took Grab car rides in 2018 and 2019. So most of these passengers are actually tourists. So they went to the Philippines, downloaded the app, and from then didn't use na the app. So we were telling the PCC, we've been very candid saying that, how do we reimburse these people, right? Because they've not, replied, they've not used the app. So what do we do with the remaining money? So finally now, they told us that, you're supposed to give them one last chance. So we will publish in newspapers of general circulation, in the Grab app, all of our social media assets, and give them 60 days to finally claim their reimbursement. So if they don't claim any unclaimed amount from the 6.9 million pesos, then we turn over to the PCC via the National Treasury. So then we would have completed the 25 million fee that was ordered by PCC in 2019.
You and Sean, Shirley's have talked about the reimbursement, no? So let's just break it down para mas simple. Paano po ba ang system of reimbursement right now?
Yep. So now the 25 million, we issued vouchers for it, for our for Grab Pay, right? So that was the agreed upon disbursement mechanism with the PCC. However, how do you give the Grab Pay credits to people who do not have Grab Pay wallets? So before we were asked, can you just make wallets for them? Much as we would like to, we are actually prevented by law. There is a BSP regulation that requires that any wallet needs to undergo a KYC or a know your customer. So you need to personally input your name, your address, and your details for you to be able to complete that, to set up that wallet. And once you have that wallet, then we could already push to you, the reimbursement that is due you. So most of reimbursements range about 1 peso. So if you actually do the actual computation, it's actually less. It's about 80 centavos. But for ease of implementation, we said round it off na lang to 1 peso. So most would get 1 peso if you only did one ride during that period, the 2018-2019 period. But of course, if you took more rides, then of course the amount would be bigger. So me personally, I got about 2 pesos and 50 centavos from this reimbursement. So hope you ladies can check. Maybe there are some
Hindi lang
reimbursement
napapansin siguro na refund na pala kami, o di ba?
Yeah, kasi we pushed it na to your wallets as agreed with the PCC. But yeah, the holdout is really what to do with those without wallets. But now we know. And we're ready to implement the publication, and hopefully we close this in 2 months' time.
Good to hear that from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Shirley Bonifacio, Director for Public Affairs at Grab Philippines.
All right, after the break, Gilas is again king of men's basketball in the SEA Games. More when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
still watching the big story here on One News. What else do we have tonight? Sean, Gretchen?
Good news to end the
Yes!
show.
Some good news!
Revenge is sweet, ika nga, diba, sabi nila. But
Very.
and for those that haven't caught up with the game, the Philippines is once again the king of hoops in Southeast Asia. Gilas Pilipinas reclaimed that gold medal in the 32nd Southeast Asian Games after taking down a reinforced Cambodian squad 80-69 in the finals. Justin Brownlee led Gilas in scoring with 23 points, while Chris Newsom added 16. The gold medal win added to the Philippines medal haul in this edition of the biennial meet, which already stood at least 53 gold medals prior to this result. The Gilas victory should also serve as a morale booster as the national team heads to the upcoming 2023 FIBA World Cup. Let's hear what Coach Chot Reyes had to say.
We just kept our focus and here we are. You know, the players did a hell of a job. They stuck together. We kept this team of what? 5 Americans, 5 imports, 6 imports to below 70 points. That was great defense. So in the end, it was our defense that got us through to this goal.
Kanina, tinitignan ko kung paano sila nag-adjust sa game na to. Nakita ko parang the big thing was managing the heat. That's why they were putting ice packs on Justin Brownlee kasi nagkakaramp siya
Nung unang game, no, against Cambodia.
That's why he performed so much better in this game.
Balita ko rin, no, parang iniksian daw nila yung warm-up nila.
Yun,
para
isa
hindi
pa yun.
mapagod.
Yes. So, very, very smart.
Hindi masyadong delayed gratification kasi just a few days ago natalo sila at 79-68. Ngayon, bawing-bawing
Alam mo naman tayo mga Pinoy, di ba? Medyo, tayo,
over-emotional.
Kasi nga, because of what happened with Cambodia, nagkaroon ng alitan ng konti. But, this is a redemption, it's completed, the redemption arc for
the
Gilas.
team.
And also for Coach Chot.
Yes, exactly. He lost the gold the last time in Vietnam and ako, sobra siyang nabash. Pero ngayon, redemption na rin.
And he really did say that they're there to win the gold medal.
And now we have it.
And he says this is his last SEA Games though. So, let's, give him, I think, a round of applause for ending his career with a gold medal in the SEA Games. But, of course, we still have the FIBA World Cup to prepare for.
That's right, and that's in August. So again, we end on a high note, and that's it from the big story tonight.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
This has been The Big Story. Thank you and good night.